Got it? All right, I'm going to do a really non-Dharma teacher thing right now. I want a video of my view of all of you. So you just wave. This is the first female Dharma talk going on. And I want my view. All right. All right, sorry, that was a little geek moment there. Okay, so I would like to invite everyone right now to imagine that today is your birthday. You can do that. Alex's birthday was on Friday. Does anyone else have a birthday that's actually happening while we're here? No? So just imagine that today is your birthday. How would that change things? Would you feel different about what goes on if today was your birthday? How do you look at the day when it's your birthday? You think about it a little differently, right? It's a different kind of focus. It's a special day. I'm going to talk about that kind of focus. I grew up in a tiny little town in Ohio, like 4,000 people, and our house was in the woods. And I would go out, I loved to get away from what was going on in the house. I went out into the woods. That was my refuge with my dog. I'm a dog person. And on my birthday, when I was somewhere between 10 and 13, I can't remember anymore. And by the way, we have no speaker system, so I'm projecting. So if you can't hear me at any moment, just do this, and I won't assume you're saying it's good. Okay? Can you hear me okay now?
When you look right at me and talk.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to look at you the whole time. All right.
Now it's my birthday.
It is. It's your birthday. So just imagine today's your birthday, and I'm going to tell a story about birthdays and that feeling you get on your birthday. So when I was somewhere between 10 and 13, it was my birthday, and what was going on in our house was it was a special day that I especially wanted to not be in the house for that day. So for my birthday, I wanted to go in the woods and get lost. Now, in a small town, when you grow up, everyone knows everyone, and you know every inch of the town. So the idea of going somewhere in the woods, and we had there was a couple acres of woods, and there were some woods over by a farm I'd never been over to by myself at that age. And the idea of being someplace where you didn't know where you were was beyond my imagination. So on my birthday, for this time, I went out with my dog, who was also thrilled to be out of the house, and we went in the woods, and I deliberately, and if you hike, you know to keep track of where you are, you always look back so you know what the view will be going back. I didn't. I looked down, and I was twisting and turning because I wanted to get lost. And I went all like this, all the way, and I finally got over to a part of the woods that I hadn't been before. And it was starting to get very exciting. And I finally got to a place in the woods, and I stopped, and I looked in all directions, and I had no idea where I was or what way to go. There was a little moment of fear, but it was thrilling. It was this, and everything stopped for a second. I can't tell you what that was because I was only 10 or 11 or 12, but I just kind of basked in that moment of not knowing where I was. And then I just picked a direction to go. My dog was kind of happily beside me, and in about less than 5 minutes I knew where I was, and I went home. 15 years later or so, in my late 20s, I'm in New York City trying to be an actress, which means I had no money. And it was my birthday. And I wanted to get lost in the woods. If you've ever been to Manhattan, there's Central Park, and it's a lovely park, and I know every square inch of it. And I know the one place you can stand in the park and not see any building, but you're still not lost in the woods. So I didn't have any money. I had no way to get out of town, and New Yorkers don't have cars. So I called everyone I knew to see if they knew some place I could go where I could get lost in the woods. And my little brother had just graduated from Georgia Tech, and he had a friend whose dad who had a cabin north of Jasper, Georgia, which is north of Atlanta. And they were going to be gone for this 10-day period, and I could go down there for free if I could get myself down there. And so I was so excited, and I got myself down to Jasper, Georgia, and it's this little town where everybody talks like that and says, praise Jesus all the time, but they're happy. And so I just saw these beaming, beautiful people, and I'm going to get lost in the woods, and I just praised Jesus with all of them because why not? I was happy to be there. And I finally got to my cabin in the woods, and there was orange shag carpeting. There was a fireplace, and everything else was woods, and there was a little lake there. It was away from everything else. There was nothing else anywhere near it. And the lake didn't have a path around it, but that's where I was going to get lost. So I would go around the lake every day, and there was no path, so I'm climbing over things. And it wasn't like my woods. There was more brush and stuff, so I'm scraping and getting over, and at one point I'm hanging from this tree over a ravine that went down about as far down as that is high, and I was hanging there for a minute, and I thought, you know, if I fall, no one will ever find me. No one knows I'm here. No one on the planet knows I'm here. It was very exciting, and I would make it around I made it around the lake and back. It took me about 3 or 4 hours because, again, there was no path, and I'm scraped and dirty and happy. And I get back, and I'm in the house, and I brought cassettes of James Taylor, which tells you how long ago this was. And I had cassettes of Steve Martin, Let's Get Small, but I just wasn't in the mood for that. And so I played James Taylor, and I lit a fire and listened to James Taylor all night. And I did the same thing the second day. And the third day, I just couldn't listen to any more James Taylor. And so I went around the lake again, and I came back, and it's silent. And this is the first moment it occurs to me that never in my life have I been alone. I have lived with someone all of my life up until this point. In New York City, I don't know if you've ever lived in New York City, but if you've seen the movie The Matrix, and when Keanu Reeves' character wakes up and he's in that thing and he sees, that's New York City. Whoever did that obviously was a New Yorker. Coming from the woods in New York City, even if you're alone in a room, there's someone above you, there's an apartment above you, an apartment below you, there's someone to that side, someone to that side. You are stacked upon stacked upon stacked upon stacked upon stacked people. And you can't walk out without a human being somewhere. I'd always lived with someone. And we had lived in a house in the woods, but there was always someone else in the house. I had never been totally alone before. And it hit me this third day with no James Taylor. And there's no TV and there's no radio. And I'm alone in these, and so it's just quiet. And so I came back from my hike in the woods and I built my fire and I sat there, and then suddenly I started to get this pain in my chest. And it got worse and worse, and I realized I was feeling this intense loneliness that I don't think I'd ever felt before. And it was this pressure, it was this ache, and it just got worse and worse. And I thought I had just never felt anything like this before. And then I started to cry, but then I thought, well, that's stupid. Why are you crying? Lonely don't, I judged myself out of crying, but crying still happened. And then if you've ever seen the Wizard of Oz, I use that analogy for everything, but this time I'll use it when the house spins and everything's going around the cyclone, and you see all the people going around as she's spinning in the house before she lands and everything. It's like I saw flashes of all these things from my life, none of which were good. There was nobody I was longing for to be with. It was every fight, every horrible thing, all the bad things that had happened to me, and they were all flashing to me as I had this aching, oh my God, the loneliness that hurt so bad. And I just ached so bad, and I didn't think you could ache that bad. And it just got more and more. And yes, peacocks, it was like that. It was like a dying cat. But it was just, I just didn't know, I didn't know what to do. I'm alone in this house. I'd planned to be there for 5 days. I'm only on the third day. And then I looked over at the fire. And it's moving. And it's alive. And I kind of walked over to the fire and I looked at it. And it was like this living creature. And I started to get mesmerized by the fire. And I was looking at it, and I'd spent a lot of time with fires. We had 5 fireplaces in my house growing up. And I was looking at the fire, and on the top was the most massive part of the fire. And down below, as I was looking, were these, like down around one log, when a little individual flame would come up. And then another individual flame. They were like these little individuals that weren't part of the mass of the whole. And I don't know if you've ever watched fires, but they're happy. Fires aren't sad. And I was looking at this fire as I was feeling this ache, and the more I just kind of went into watching this fire, I became kind of hypnotized by it. I was kind of entranced by this fire. And I started looking at these little individual fires that were separate. They were their own thing. And I'd watch them, and I'd watch them move and how they were happy and moving around. And they were kind of like these living creatures to me. And then I noticed these little creatures, and they had their own life and their own dance. And then if they had any opportunity at all, they'd try to join the big fire. Even though if they join that big fire, they disappear. They are annihilated. They don't exist anymore. It's this individual little event, and suddenly it's just part of the big. It disappeared. For me, hell was like someone said, oh, just like being a drop in the water. To me, that would be hell. I was in New York trying to be an actress, right? It was like, and the fact that these little flames were seeking out other flames, and they had this life, and they were sacrificing their life happily to become part of the big happy. And I just kept watching this fire. This later, years later, I refer to this as a fire meditation that I did years later, but this was a decade before I meditated. And I was watching this fire, and later on in the fire, I noticed that I had become quite calm as I was watching this fire. And then the fire started to get less and less, and the fire had been my friend. It was like this living creature, and I was watching it live and die and be born. Little ones get born, and then they would join the other and give up their lives to be part of this whole. And then as the fire got less and less, I realized that I was feeling quite peaceful and happy. And instead of going in the bedroom to sleep that night, I slept in front of the fire. And we went to sleep together. And I woke up the next morning, and it was a fascinating thing. The loneliness was gone. And I have never, for an instant, since that moment, experienced loneliness. It was gone. And I, in the last 40 years of my life, I have lived alone for 30 of them. And I've never been lonely. In fact, I take vacations to be alone because I don't get enough alone time. Okay? Maybe it's because I teach and act, and when I'm with people, I'm really with people. And I call these things, I call it my people fast, and I go camping. And when I came to California in '92 is when I really started doing it. And I go camping by myself in total solitude, usually on top of a mountain, although for the last 15 years I have a nice little spot up on the coast of California where I get to watch the sun and moon set into the ocean from my sleeping bag. And it's an environmental site. There's no one anywhere, and I go up for anywhere from 4 to 12 days by myself, at least twice a year. Never lonely for an instant, okay? And people, when I tell them I do these camping trips, I usually get 3 questions. The first one is, aren't you afraid? And of course, don't be silly. This is my refuge. Nature is that's my womb, right? The second question, for some reason, I don't know why everyone asks it, but what do you eat? I have no idea why people ask that question. And I used to just take whatever food I could have, but after I did a vision quest years later, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but a vision quest is a Native American ceremony. We spend 4 days and nights alone on a mountain with no food or water. And of course, the alone on the mountain part is what they think of as a sacrifice. I'm good with that. No food, I could go. No water, you know, you lose your mind a little bit on the 3rd night, or I did anyway. But the reason I'm bringing that up in terms of what do you eat, on your vision quest, you have no food. So your relationship to animals is quite different when you have no food, right? Animals just want to know, are you going to eat them or can they eat something you have, right? And I remember when I went on my vision quest, you know, you're in a small 6 by 6 foot space with no tent. You don't have a tent there. And you're out in the open, and it's surrounded by prayer ties, which are, you pray with tobacco, and you put it in a little piece of cloth, and you wrap it up, and you make a prayer with it. And they're your prayers, and there's 200 prayer ties. So your prayers, you're surrounded by your prayers in this little open exposed spot, and they say, animals will not cross your boundary. The Waluta will protect you. I think the animals just smell the tobacco. But in any event, when I did my vision quest, it just so happened that I put my site in the middle of what turned out to be a 4-lane animal highway. It was the only spot where 2 ridges joined. So at night, when it got night, you know, in the day, I'm going, isn't this wonderful? And at night, I'd hear the animals come and they go, stop, you know, like, what's there? Some big animal made a nest in the middle of their path, right? and then I hear them all kind of gathering around, going, what do we do? I don't know. Do we go around with it? And then I kind of made sounds like, you know, I wanted them to go about their business, but I wanted to go about mine, and they just realized there was an animal in their path that made a nest. What do? And so I just started making sounds because I thought that I wanted them to know that I'm staying. But I'm not interested in them. So I yawned and kind of, just kind of did it and settled. And then slowly, then little ones would just kind of go by, and little ones would go by. And I went to sleep with animals just kind of moving around me during the course of the night. And I loved that relationship with animals during my whole vision quest. Someone would just kind of come up and sniff and go by. So people ask me back to my camping trips, what do I eat? And I take very little food for that reason. I like that relationship with animals. There's a third question I get when people say, you know, you're going up for 12 days alone on a hill, is what do you do? And in fact, Shinzen asked me, what do you do? And I said, really? You don't know what I do? And he went, no, I really don't. But I think maybe he couldn't imagine being alone on a mountain in the maybe that was part of it. But one thing I do say when everyone asks me, what do you do? I say, I don't know, but that 12 days goes by like 4 hours. It just goes by like that. It's gone. Now, I have different techniques I do. Usually when I'm on the hill, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the ocean, and I'm on a little jut of land that goes out into the ocean on the California coast. So it's kind of like I'm at sea, like whales will be out there. And I've got sky moving all around, and I've got the grass right here blowing in the wind, and I can see it right now. And the trees are right here. And so there's this flow everywhere. And I know I just sit there and watch flow until there is just flow and I'm not really there anymore. And I also know that when I get there, climbing up, because to get to this site that is away from other people, you gotta hike in. And I take stuff, right? So it takes me 4 hours of going back and forth, and the hill is about 45-degree angle. So I get this little cart behind me, and I don't weigh a lot, and I put a lot back there, so the cart sometimes is a little heavier than I am because I want to, get stuff up there. And so I'll have the cart behind me, and so I'm bent over forward at a 45-degree angle, so my face, the dirt is here, and my face is here. Woo! Sorry, my Madonna thing is moving. And so I will literally go up the hill that way. And I used to go into meditation, and see rest or see out or something like that. But what I now do when I'm carrying my cart, who is seeing? Who is pulling? I just do a couple of questions of self-inquiry, and then there is just activity happening and I'm not really there, right? And so that's so when I'm on the hill, everyone says, what do you do? It's like, I don't know because I'm not there. Okay. I'm not there. So anyway, the other thing I wanted to say is what I noticed started to happen. These trips started as my gift to myself for my birthday. Then they became something I had to do. If I didn't do it that year, it was like I forgot. It's like saying you forgot to eat or sleep or breathe, or it was an essential thing I needed. In fact, I'm going on a trip after this retreat for a week. Yay! But I noticed something started happening. When I'm getting ready to go, I'm packing up to go for camping. I noticed the minute I'm done fixing everything I have to do in my life, you had to come on retreat and everything. The minute I start packing, something would click, and I was in ceremony. It was like I got it from my birthday ceremony. It was like, it was my birthday. There was something about the packing and everything that it didn't matter if I was there or not. In fact, I've been there so many times. I know every rock and thing. I don't even have to go. It's here. It's inside me. But the packing itself, something clicked in, and I was in ceremony, and I was just happy driving up, and it didn't matter if I was doing a meditation technique or not. This kind of in ceremony thing would click in and happen, and I didn't have the word in ceremony until after I did Native American ceremonies. That's where I learned that. Then I'm going to shift for a moment so I was doing that here from 92 to 98, and I was having all sorts of interesting experiences from 92 to 98. Some what I guess we would call mystical or spiritual experiences were happening, but I didn't know anyone to talk to about that. I was a New Yorker, and if anyone said mystical or spiritual, I'd leave the room. Usually that I was a very cynical New Yorker, so I hadn't cultivated friends to talk to. And in fact, soon as this stuff happened is when I left New York, so I didn't even know anybody out here. So I spent 6 years with these things happening, kind of creating my own system of what to do with them. And then I thought, I really want to talk to somebody about this. And I just didn't know who knew about this. And so I'd kind of go, and this was before Google and internet, and you could call operators and ask them questions about things, but they don't really know. And I'd go in the phone book and look at centers and kind of put my head in the door, and they'd say, no, you have to bow to this person, or you have to do this over here. And I knew that wasn't the direct route I wanted, because I knew where it was. I just wanted to talk to someone. And finally I said, I don't think I'm going to find anybody. So maybe I'll meditate. The idea of sitting still for 5 minutes, I thought was one of the most ridiculous concepts you could have. And, but I thought, maybe I'll do that, and there's something there. So I went down to the Bodhi Tree, which is a spiritual bookstore that doesn't exist anymore in LA, and I asked the young guy behind the counter who had a Walkman, again, I'm dating myself, and I looked at all the books, and it was just overwhelming, and I said, I like to experience things. I said, is there any kind of tape or recording? And he said, oh yeah, over here, there's 5 meditations by this guy named Shinzen Young. And I said, perfect. He said, there's 5 different kinds. And went, perfect. I got an appetizer platter. I can pick which one I like. And so I was house sitting for someone in Mar Vista, so I lit candles, and I made a bath, because that's what I thought you had to do to meditate. And then I got stoned, because I thought that's what you had to do to meditate. And so every night I did one of these meditations, and there was karma yoga and mantra and loving kindness and Kabbalah. I thought it was Kabbalah, but it's not. It's Kabbalah. And then Vipassana was one of them, and I really went, each one. I was like, yeah, that works so well, until I got to that Vipassana one. I thought, that is just a little too technical, that one. But the other 4 were great, right? And then I thought, but I come from a family of teachers. My mom's a teacher, my sisters are teachers. They're all like famous teachers in their worlds. And so I thought, that guy explains things really well. Let me see if I can find him. But I tried to find LA Meditation Center, and the operator was not helping me at all, because it didn't exist anymore. And I went, oh, well. And then about a month later, some guy called me and said, that guy that you were looking for, he's on KPFK now. And I turned on KPFK, and I heard him. He sounded older. He still sounded like a woman, but he sounded older. And I listened to him, and they said, this is Shinzen Young, Vipassana Support Institute. And I went, oh, man, of all those cool meditations, he chose Vipassana? That was the technical one, But he was the teacher. When I went to college, I said, what should I learn? And my mom and her mom both said, just go to what the good teachers are teaching. And I thought, I'm not listening to you. I'm not going to learn just what the good teachers are teaching. But now I wanted a good teacher, and he explained things well. So I find myself at a first retreat. I've never sat for longer than 5 minutes in my life, and I'm at a meditation retreat. And everyone's got these mats, and it's at Holy Spirit up in Encino, and everybody's at the beginning going around, and it's a long hall. Like he would be up here, and it's a long hall. And everybody wants to get up close, and they're all sitting around and getting their little, what I thought were campsites. And they get their little campsites here, and everyone had their campsites. And they wanted to real quick get there, and it really depended on where they were, and then they sit and close their eyes. And they're closing their eyes facing a blank wall. There's nobody here. And I thought, what does it matter where you are in the room if your eyes are closed? I didn't understand this. And then Shinzen came in, and I then talked and was eloquent, and I went, that's the guy. Oh, wow. Listening to him was so inspiring. He was talking about things I knew, but with clarity and shining light on it in a different way. But then they talked about, you talk about the Za. There was a Zabuton and a Zafu and Yaza. And so I assumed this was Zabo. Right? I thought there was a Za for everything, right? And so on this retreat, everybody's walking around, and when they're talking, up to this retreat, he had been teaching is his meditation technique, apparently, and by the way, since then I've done a 7-hour video interview with him of his beginning all the way up through the 5 ways. And for 20 years, he taught nothing but noting location of body sensation, where you just sit there, go knee, elbow, nose, shoulder. That was it. And at this retreat, he was doing talk, image, feel, and everyone was freaking the F out. They were like, what are you doing? Can we just please go back to noting location of body sensation? And I didn't know what any of it was, right? But first timers, we had to go in a room and count 1 to 10, and you had to visualize the number 1, say the number 1, and then do it on your breath. So you're feeling a breath, seeing and hearing the number 1. And we had to go 1 to 10, and I thought that was the stupidest thing anyone had ever asked anyone to do. And I looked around and everyone's like, oh yeah, this is interesting. And I thought, I need to leave this room now, okay? I thought, I'm just gonna listen to him when he talks. I have something I can do with my eyes closed that's good. And then I'm walking down, and everyone's fluttering to sign up for something called an online, where they go in some room and talk on the telephone. No, thank you. And I'm going down the hall, and there was only one man I talked to the first day, Michael Basler, you might know. And I was walking down the hall, and he was going in one of those rooms, and he pulled me aside. He said, did you sign up for one of these? And I went, no. And he said, you really need to do this. And I went, it's okay, I'm good. And he said, no, you take mine. And he just kind of thrust me into that room. Well, that moment kind of changed my life. So I'm going in this room, I'm putting on a headset going, this is so weird, this is so weird. And I'm sitting there looking around, what are we supposed to do? And then Shinzen comes on and goes, Michael? And I said, no, this is Stephanie. Michael had me come in instead of him. And he went, so how was your practice? I've never meditated. I said, I'm a new person. And he went, oh, so do you have any questions? And I said, actually I do. This whole talk, image, feel thing, I teach people how to juggle. I know how to get 3 things going. I can do that. So it's not that I can't do it, but what is the point? I mean, plus it's so technical, it feels like playing scales. I was an oboe player. I stopped because I hated playing scales. I just wanted to play the music. And he said, it is playing scales, but the music is your life. Good answer. Right? Good answer. Music is your life. I still didn't want to meditate. I still didn't want to do it, but that was a good answer. He impressed me with that. And then I said, but I can close my eyes. I had a spontaneous experience about a year earlier that happened to me, and ever since then, all I had to do was close my eyes. Everything dissolves into this light. that is everything. There is no me, there is no anything. And I can just go to that, and when I open my eyes, I'm barely beaming down, everyone's beaming down, and I see how that light is really all that's here too. And it fills me with love and everything for the world. I said, I can do that. You still think I need talk, image, feel? And he said, and people, whenever I told that to people, they go, oh, you're going to a blissy place. And I thought, that seems kind of condescending. I go, can you close your eyes and do it? But either way, and I said, this is what I do. People have told me it's a blissy place. And I said, you still think I need talk, image, feel? And he said, there's going to come a time when the doo-doo hits the AC, and you're not going to be able to go to that blissy place. And I said, oh, yes, I am. I said, I can do this anytime I want. I've never not been able to go to a blissy place. And he said, no, there's going to come a time when things happen, circumstances in your life, and that will not be available to you. And then what do? He said, I'm teaching you techniques to be able to work with your sensory experience in a way so that you can optimize anything that happens in your life. Another good answer. And I said, okay, all right. And so he said, so try it, and I'll get back to you in 25 minutes. He had 5 people in the room then, okay? So I went, okay, that was a good answer. All right, I'll try it. And I started doing it, and about 4 minutes later, he comes back online. And he says, can you teach anyone how to juggle? And I said, yeah, pretty much. He said, can you teach me how to juggle? And I said, well, have you ever played a ball sport? And he said, what's that? And I said, have you ever had to take a ball and aim it, throw it, and aim where it goes? And he went, oh, no, and I'm really spastic. And I said, okay, well then it'll take longer, but you know about that. So after that retreat, over the next 3 months, about 5 or 6 times, I am over at Shirley Fenton's house. She's in bed, Shinzen's here, and I am teaching him how to juggle. And I'm saying, no, put your hand here, no, just here, no, into my hand. So if I'm here beside you, put it here. So I'm in a teacher mode to him, and he's going, oh, okay, good. And then one time he got like a flash, where you just kind of throw 3 and catch them, and I said, that's a flash! And Shinzen went, oh, I did a flash! And I thought, wow, this is the same man who gives those amazing dharma talks, you know? And so I had a different relationship with him from the first moment, right? So anyway, because of this relationship with him, when he asked me to teach him to juggle, he said, then I will mentor you in your meditation practice. So he would call me on the phone all the time and say, so how's your practice? And I go, well, you know, I'm doing this and this. And I ended up marrying the man I sat next to at the first retreat, and he'd been with Shinzen 7 years. And he said, you know, Shinzen has never once called me to ask me about my practice. And I said, yeah, but you're not teaching him how to juggle. So then Shinzen takes me to a sweat lodge ceremony, okay? And we're going to go to a sweat lodge ceremony. You talk about it a lot. Okay, and they talk about how hot it's going to be, and I'm really good with heat, and I'm in the back seat of the car with him and another man, Bill, and Shinzen's in the front seat, pounding like so loud on a drum and howling in Yakota, you know, the songs, going, isn't this great? And he's just going on and on and on. The whole car is rattling with this. And then they stop and they turn to each other and go, oh yeah, wasn't that one hot? Yeah, that was hot. Yeah, we really purified on that one, you know. And they were just talking about this heat. And I'm getting kind of nervous, you know. Like, I just want to know if I'm going to survive, little things like that. And so I kind of mentioned, I go, you know, how long actually are we in there? And, you know, I'm getting a little nervous about this. And Shinzen turns around and goes, ah, you're nervous. Then your ceremony has begun. The ceremony has reached forward in time and grabbed you by the belly button. And I said, excuse me? And he said, if you're focusing on it, you're connected to the ceremony already. And in that moment, I remembered what happened before I went camping. When I kind of went in ceremony before I went camping, I was there. Except this was more of a sense of dread and fear and that kind of stuff. Well, finally we get to the sweat lodge, and I love, there's a fire. It's around a fire. I'm happy. I like fires. And there was a fire there, and there's sage, and it all smells good, and we go inside a lodge, and I'm behind him, and then they come in, and these red hot rocks come in, and it's like primal. It's so cool. And they put him in the center, and they bring him with antlers, and then they bring in the wakan, the water, in a big bucket of water, and they close the door, and then the rock glows, and then they take the water, and then he's singing a song, and he throws it on the rocks, and wherever he throws the water on the rocks, it goes black there, so the light starts going out. And then he throws it on 3 times, and you hear this psh, psh, as the water hits the rocks. And then suddenly it occurs to me that water and rocks will be steam. I'm great with heat. I'm great in saunas. I can't breathe in the steam room. I don't do well with steam. No one ever said the word steam. For some reason, it never occurred to me that we were going to be sitting in steam. Heat, yes, good. Steam, no. I am panicking. And I'm going, oh shoot, this is going to be steam. This is going to be steam. Internal talk, just running amok. And then suddenly, this big wall of steam hits me and envelops me, and you're just going, and I think I didn't breathe for a moment. And then there's a little hysteria in my head, but the steam kind of kept me going for a while. And Shinzen warned me, whatever you do, don't you get out of this lodge early, because you're representing me, okay? And he's right here in front of me. Like, I'm right here with the rocks, and he's right there. And I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm going to die. This is the end of my life as I know it, right? And you think you can't breathe, right? So I make it through the first round, and then they lift the flap, and I know there's going to be 3 more of these. So I went, okay, I survived that one. I can survive 3 more. The third round is where they don't sing, and all they do is sit there and put the water on the rocks, and all you hear is the sound of the water and the psh, psh going on the rocks. And they do it, and that's the purify round, where it gets so hot that I sat there, my ears were singeing, and then it literally, I started getting goosebumps all over my skin as if I was cold. And I literally sat there, and then suddenly my mind stopped. It was so hot. It just like the heat just went whoa. And I was in a suspended period of no thinking for the first time in my life. It was amazing. And so after that, I thought, okay, that was interesting. We had another round. We came out. Shinzen and Bill and I are getting in the car, and I just feel euphoric. I'm just like, wow, that was really great. And Shinzen said, yes, that's the taste of purification. And I went, okay. And he said, yes, it's an anipi, it's a purification lodge. And I loved this ceremony they had where everyone came with this focus, and they had a way of talking when you're in the lodge. They had a way they do activities. Everyone's focus comes in and creates this ceremony and this purification. And in that lodge, if you cry in that lodge, that's a blessing to the ceremony. I thought, this is so friggin' cool. I fell in love with it, and I did sweat lodge every week for the next 6 years. Except on nights that women can't go. You can't go on your moon time. So I was like, but other than that, I was there every night for the next 6 years. I thought that was kind of the greatest thing in the world. And then when after that, then I did a vision quest, and that I told you about a little bit. And one thing I want to say about the vision quest is that, Shinzen kind of tricked, well, anyway, how I did the vision quest is another thing. But one thing about a vision quest and being out in nature and that ceremony, and that's another ceremony where people come and they support you and they have that kind of special focus on it. You're sitting in one spot in nature, watching the sun rise, go across the sky and down, all the stars come, and it comes up again. By the time you're 60, you will have spent about 22,000 days on this planet. And rarely do you ever stop to just watch one of them. So the vision quest is where I learned that time would shift. It was 3 days, but it was like time opened up and there was more time. So my camping trips after the vision quest, I stopped moving. Before that, I was hiking. After my vision quest, I just sit there. And I don't move for 12 days, and I don't need much food when I'm not moving. But that ceremony, so the sacred ceremony of the sweat lodge, and that's when I started calling my camping in ceremony. And this notion of being in ceremony, I started using it in my life, going, I'm going in ceremony now. Everything I do now will be sacred. There's a certain kind of focus in on it, and I usually light a candle to remind me I'm in ceremony. One thing, though, I will say, when I camp alone, there were maybe 4 occasions in 20 years where I did call Shinzen. And one time I called Shinzen, I was out on the hill looking over everything, and I decided I wanted to hold all of visual, auditory, and somatic experience at the same time, but keep them separate and distinct. And this was before See, Hear, Feel. This is the 5 ways what we were rocking and rolling on at that time. And so I said, I want to spatially hold them all. I was a very ambitious meditator. So I went, okay, feel is easy. It's in the body. Got a sense of that. See, it was before See, Hear, Feel. So it was visual was easy because it's here and it's all forward. Hear was a little tricky because it's here and it goes out to the side. So that space of here to hold both here in and here out was a little trickier because it went out and here and see kind of crossed over a little bit here. But I did it and I got to where I held all of them at the same time, and then I treated it like a 3-dimensional pizza, and I wanted to cut the cheese. I wanted to really draw a line between it, so I had distinct lines between all of them, and cutting around the body was easy. Between see and hear was a little gnarly, and I was in deep concentration, and I was just at the edge of cutting the cheese on see and hear, and then I did it. I cut the cheese, and then all 3 of them flew apart. See flew out there, hear flew out here, body flew out here, leaving nothing in the center. And I mean, I'd experienced the source before, but not that way. And I went, that is so cool. I have to call Shinzen. I have to tell him, this is what we should teach everyone. All you have to do is a 3-slice pizza, visual, auditory, somatic, and then cut the cheese. And so I call Shinzen on the phone and I say, this is it. We're going to do this and cut the cheese. And he went, well, here's what I see as an issue with that. He said, everyone's not going to be able to hold all 3 spaces. And some people are going to find it difficult to, as you say it, cut the cheese. And he said, and I'm quite happy with the 5 ways right now. I really think that is the way we're going to go. And I said, but this is just 3 things. It'll take them a week, And he's like, thank you, but I think I'm good with the 5 ways. He just, and I was disappointed, and I watched my sensations, but I went back and I thought that was the most novel thing in the world. So 4 years later, 5 years later, when he came up with See, Hear, Feel, I was like, see! Because at that time, feel was just emotional. So I called it Seeing, Hearing, Body, is what I called it. But basically it was called the 3-slice cut the cheese. Anyway, that's an example of that ceremony. Then, after doing my ceremony and doing the sweat lodge ceremonies for a long time, I started seeing retreats as this ceremony. And I thought, it's really interesting. We all kind of come, it's sacred, everyone's bringing their focus. It's one thing about the Native American ceremony, everyone brings their focus, but everyone's working on their own thing, right? You cry for you, we all get blessed by that, right? And here, I thought everyone's coming, everyone's working on their own thing, but yet we're supported by the group. And there was something kind of sacred about that. And I started seeing retreats as a kind of ceremony. And then I started to see how the ceremony held us. Like in the sweat lodge ceremonies, the drumming's there, and everybody, the whole ceremony itself kind of supports you. Kind of in the way Shinzen was talking about the Zen, you do that, and then that kind of movement supports you in that way. And I started seeing how this kind of supported us. And everyone has a time on retreat when you're, you can't get focused, or you're getting emotional, or your knees or butt hurt, or you think you're doing the technique wrong, or someone in the zendo is moving or eating a sandwich or something, right? And there's just something going on that's a challenge, and there's always somebody who's doing their own practice, but it's inspiring, right? So everybody's own practice contributes to this kind of whole ceremony that we come do. And as I started seeing that as a ceremony, when I came, I started packing for retreats in the way I did for when I was camping. It's like I'm in ceremony now. And I'd come and I'd listen to a dharma talk, and even if it was like, oh, I'm too busy, I did stop your life to come. And then after the second day, I'd listen and I'd go, this is the most important work we can do. All that other stuff I had to do that's really, really important, that I have all these lists that I'm going to do when I get back. This has to happen first. If everyone on the planet was doing this, there would be no problems, right? I thought, wow, this work is sacred, what we're doing. And we're not coming here and gathering around a fire. We're gathering around this brilliant man who's created a vocabulary and a vocabulary and terminology for sensory experience, so we can talk about the most subtle and deep aspects of anything and communicate about it. And we can tell him what's happening, and as teachers, we know what's going on with somebody, and we can share this language and be able to help people. And I'll just say, as a teacher on this retreat, I've been getting a good workout. But I will say, the joy as a teacher, to use his system as a teacher, the effective result of it is unlike anything. I mean, that newcomer group that didn't just have newcomers, you guys rock. You know it, right? The reports of what they were doing were things that most people I know weren't doing until their third retreats. They're processing, oh yeah, I had this huge feeling and I let it go through and then I felt peace. It's just like, rock and roll. We do high fives for that stuff. But I really, at this retreat, I appreciated having this to work with, to help people, honoring it. But I also, and in my life, I work with people who don't know Shinzen system. I'm using his system to help people rewire habit patterns of thinking, feeling, behaving, to help them suffer less and be happier, but they don't know the system. So here, people are coming in with these advanced questions of depths of the system. So I got a good workout I haven't had in a long time. And I thought, wow, it just made me feel so like I'm doing something I'm supposed to be doing. And then I thought, I could meditate here, I can teach here. They're kind of the same thing, except one I'm talking more, right? Like the fulfillment, the mudita, oh my gosh, this is mudita city here at the moment, and you know what that is. And so anyway, I was just feeling this gratitude for this man who has created this vocabulary and this system of categorizing sensory experience and giving us strategies and techniques that are the yellow brick road to the source and happiness. And there's an infinite variety of ways within this system you can take. You can go whichever way feels good for you. All roads lead to the source. And I just always, every time I'm teaching it, every time I'm working with someone who's getting ahas and shifting, I feel a thrilling kind of excitement and gratitude that's kind of like how I felt on my birthday ceremonies, right? With this, that we're all kind of coming together, and also the other thing that he developed is this interactive meditation. Who else does that? That's like exploratory surgery. Someone's meditating, you can meditate with them, and interactively, whatever's happening, they've got an expert guiding them where to go, which is what he does on onlines, but as teachers, we learn how to do that. What a tool for helping the planet. So sometimes we're challenged and we can get inspiration from those that are sitting longer, and other times we're sitting here inspired with gratitude. And we can come here and get insight into how we are born in each moment. The waves come in and go out, and between them the foam is created, and that's us. To quote him, we are born in the cleft of expansion and contraction. In each moment. And we come here in this ceremony to share this. And if we're born in each moment, then today is your birthday. Today is our birthday. And I hope that your birthday ceremony contributes to you becoming a better person and experiencing happiness independent of condition. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.